Most people pass through a store like it's just a pit stop, in and out, buy something quick, forget the face behind the counter. But some moments don't disappear. Some stay burned into the memory of the people who witness them. And when that moment begins with a child trying to give more than she has, the world briefly pauses to watch what happens next. It was a slow, gray afternoon at Carter's General, a small local shop tucked between a dry cleaner and a vape store on the edge of downtown. The bell above the door jingled every hour or so, usually for tired regulars grabbing batteries or a greeting card. But today, it chimed a little different. A girl walked in, maybe 8, maybe 9 years old, a brown hoodie too large for her frame and sneakers with duct tape around the toes. She moved carefully, eyes darting around the store as if worried she'd be told to leave. Behind the counter, an older man in a red vest, Russell, the store manager, looked up from the register. His expression said what he didn't. No smile. No welcome. The girl lingered by the gift aisle. Her fingers brushed across shelves of mugs and pens, stopping briefly on a keychain shaped like a wrench. Then she moved on to the ties. All of them hung neatly in rows. Cheap silk meant more for thought than style. She picked up a navy blue one. It had tiny motorcycles embroidered into the fabric. The price tag read $9.99. She held it for a long time, then finally turned toward the register. Russell sighed. She approached the counter slowly, both hands on the tie like it might fall if she didn't grip tight enough. "I want to buy this," she said quietly. Russell scanned it. "That's $10." The girl pulled a Ziploc bag from her hoodie pocket. Inside were coins, mostly pennies. A few dimes. $1 bill wrinkled and folded 3 times over. She poured it onto the counter with both hands. Russell stared at the pile. "Are you serious?" She nodded. "It's for my dad," she said. "It's his birthday." Russell glanced at the clock. He didn't like kids, not since his divorce, and especially not ones who slowed down the line even if there was no line behind her. He started counting out loud, annoyed. $1, $1.52. It was taking too long. She stood silently, watching him with hope and fear tangled in her eyes. A man entered the store quietly, didn't draw attention, didn't need to. Black coat, clean boots, calm footsteps. Jason Statham. He stood near the drinks, pretending to browse, but he watched everything. Russell finished counting. $6.82, he said. "You're short." The girl nodded. "I have more at home, I just—" Russell shook his head. "No more. No tie." He slid the coins back toward her. The girl's face didn't crumble, it just froze, like she'd practiced not reacting. Jason stepped forward. His boots echoed on the linoleum. Russell looked up. Jason placed a bottle of water on the counter. "Add the tie." Russell squinted. "You sure?" Jason nodded. He pulled a $50 from his coat. "Cover her tie. Keep the change." Russell blinked. Jason didn't repeat himself. Russell took the bill. Shakily scanned both items. The girl stared at Jason, eyes wide. She didn't speak. Jason looked down at her. "You want to bag that?" She nodded quickly. Russell handed her a small paper bag, watching like he couldn't quite process what just happened. She dropped the tie inside and clutched the bag like it was made of glass. Jason turned to leave, but the girl followed him to the door. "Sir," she said, barely above a whisper. He paused. She reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out something small, a folded piece of paper. She held it out. Jason took it. Inside was a drawing, colored pencil, maybe crayon. 2 stick figures, one taller than the other, both wearing capes. Underneath, "Thank you for saving me." Jason didn't react outwardly, but something in his jaw tightened. He nodded once, then left the store. Back at the counter, Russell stood frozen, still holding the 50, still processing. A second later, the store bell rang again. This time louder. A man in a leather jacket stormed in, bald, red-faced, eyes wild. "Where's my kid?" The girl backed away. "Dad," she said. He walked toward her fast, not relief, anger. Jason hadn't gone far. He was still just outside. He turned when he heard it, the shouting. The tension. He came back through the door like wind behind a storm. The father turned at the sound. Jason was already between them. "Problem?" he asked. The father blinked. "Who the hell are you?" Jason didn't answer. He looked down at the girl. "She good?" She nodded. "Barely." Russell called out, confused. "What's going on here?" Jason stared at the man. "Maybe you should step outside." The man laughed. "Is this a joke?" Jason didn't blink. "I don't joke." The father clenched his fists, but didn't swing. He knew better. Something in Jason's eyes told him this wasn't a fight he'd win. "I'm just here for my kid." Jason looked down at the girl again. She stepped forward, grabbed her dad's hand, gave him the bag. "Happy birthday," she whispered. The man looked at the bag, then at Jason, then back at his daughter. His face softened for half a second, then hardened again. "Come on," he said. She followed. Jason watched them walk down the street. They didn't talk, but the gift stayed in his hand. Jason stepped back into the store. Russell looked like he'd seen a ghost. "What just happened?" he asked. Jason shrugged. "Depends how you see it." He walked back to the counter, pointed at the open till, "Put the rest of that 50 toward anyone who looks like they need it." Russell didn't move. Jason leaned forward slightly. "And if I hear you gave anyone a hard time again, we'll talk different." He left without another word. The bell jingled softly behind him. Russell stood frozen. For the first time in a long time, a tear slipped down his cheek, not from fear, but from realizing he'd just watched someone be better than he was, without saying much at all. The girl's drawing sat folded in Jason's coat pocket like it didn't belong in a place so harsh. One corner was already creased from how tightly he'd held it leaving the store. He didn't unfold it again. He didn't need to. The image was etched in his mind, a little girl in a cape standing beside a silent protector. No words, just color and presence. Jason didn't head straight home. He took the long way, walking alley routes and side roads, letting the city breathe around him. The streets buzzed with Friday noise, impatient horns, late buses, couples arguing about where to eat. But through all the chaos, one image stayed fixed in his mind, the girl's face when she reached out with nothing but a crayon drawing and gratitude. It had been a long time since something shook him, but this did, not because it was dramatic, because it was quiet, raw, unfiltered. That kind of moment has weight, and Jason carried it into the next day. Saturday morning brought heat early, the air already thick by 9 a.m., even though the sun was barely above the skyline. Jason sat at a corner cafe, outdoor seat, black coffee untouched in front of him. His posture was relaxed, but his mind wasn't. He watched everyone. The barista who smiled too much, the busboy whose shoes were military issue, the man at the newspaper stand who kept glancing across the street. Something was off. Jason's gut told him so. When his phone buzzed, he didn't look surprised. Unknown number. No text, just a link. He clicked it. The screen loaded a grainy video, surveillance footage from the store. The exact moment he paid for the girl's gift, Jason's face, the cash on the counter, the hug, someone had pulled the feed, and was now showing him they had it. No watermark, no thread attached, just proof they were watching. He looked up, scanned the street again. The man at the newspaper stand was gone. Jason stood, left the coffee untouched, and walked. Carter's General looked different in daylight, less dim, more revealing. Russell was behind the counter again, this time more alert, but still dragging that tired, familiar resentment in his eyes. He looked up when Jason entered, straightened a little. "I didn't expect you back." Jason walked slowly toward the counter. "You give that girl any trouble after I left?" Russell shook his head quickly. "No, none. She hasn't come back." Jason studied him, then placed both hands on the counter. Someone leaked the camera feed. Russell's mouth dropped slightly. "What?" "The footage. From yesterday." "You store it on your system." Russell hesitated. "We record, but I don't touch it. Uploads automatically to cloud storage. Standard service." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Who else has access? Corporate, maybe. IT vendor. Look, I don't know. We just log in when we need to check a theft." Jason stared at him. Something wasn't adding up. "Show me the system." Russell blinked. "I'm not supposed to." Jason leaned in. "Then don't. Just do it." Russell opened the back office door. Jason followed. Inside the office, the light buzzed overhead. One monitor. One outdated login screen. Russell sat and entered the store ID. He pulled up the surveillance index. The footage list stopped abruptly. Everything before yesterday deleted. Jason's eyes narrowed. "You didn't do this." Russell shook his head. "I swear." Jason pulled out his phone, took a photo of the screen, then turned to leave. Russell stood, nervous. "Is this a problem? I mean, what would anyone want with that video?" Jason paused at the door. "You'd be surprised who watches kindness like it's weakness." Outside, Jason made a call. Claire answered on the second ring. Her voice was groggy. "It's Saturday." Jason didn't smile. "Someone scrubbed footage of me at a corner shop yesterday and sent it back to me." Claire sighed. "You sure it's not a prank?" "No watermark, no trail, just the clip." That made her pause. "Want me to dig?" Jason looked both ways before speaking. "I think they're testing the water. I want to know who's swimming." By afternoon, Jason had a new location. Claire sent a ping, a partial trace from the source IP, bounced through 5 servers but finally landing near a co-working building in Echo Park. Jason didn't wait. He grabbed a jacket, laced his boots, and went. The building was 3 floors, all startups and low-rent tech companies trying to look important. Jason walked in through the front door like he belonged. The receptionist looked up but said nothing. He scanned the directory. One unit caught his attention, Vex Point Media. He took the stairs. At the second-floor landing, he saw its Suite 2B. Door slightly ajar, lights off. He knocked once, no answer, then opened the door. The office was empty but not abandoned. Inside, monitors hummed softly. A desk cluttered with hard drives and USB sticks. One screen still active, playing a looped video, the store feed. Jason walked to the desk, clicked through the tabs, multiple surveillance clips, all involving him, different days, different locations. A gym he visited twice last month. A veterans outreach center he quietly funded. Even footage of him exiting a hospital after visiting someone who didn't know he came. This wasn't just about the girl, it was about him. Jason reached for one of the hard drives, and then the monitor blinked. A new file opened, just text. Still think kindness is your armor. Then it closed. The system wiped. Jason unplugged the main CPU, grabbed the drive, left the rest. Outside, he called Claire again. They've been watching me for a while. Claire was alert now. This is deeper than random surveillance. Jason nodded. They're building a case, or a trap. Either way, I'm not stepping around it anymore. Back at his apartment, Jason laid out the drive contents, encrypted, locked behind 7 layers, but not military grade. He could work with this. Hours passed. He cracked the first wall. Inside was a single folder labeled Ember. He clicked. One photo, one name, the girl, and underneath it, target, leverage asset. Subject 71A, guardian unknown. Jason's breath left his lungs. This wasn't about her birthday. This was about something far bigger. They were watching her long before he walked into that store. She was never a random child. She was a flag, a marker, a test. Jason leaned back, realization crashing in. He hadn't saved her. He'd walked into their bait. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. Jason sat in near darkness, the only light coming from his monitor's pale glow. The folder labeled Ember was still open. The girl's image, frozen mid-smile, stared back at him, innocent, trusting. A photo that should have meant nothing to anyone outside her family, and yet here it was. On a drive tied to surveillance of him. This wasn't random. It wasn't just a trap. It was intentional. And that meant one thing: someone knew Jason wouldn't walk past a kid in need. Someone was counting on that instinct. But who? The question scratched at his brain like broken glass. Jason stood, slid the drive into a sealed pouch and locked it in his safe. His movements were precise, practiced. He didn't allow emotion to slow him. Not now. He opened a drawer, pulled out a black notebook, handwritten, decades old. Inside, contact codes, names. People he hadn't spoken to since he walked away from that world. He paused on one. Rourke, no first name, no rank, just a 5-digit number and a burner signal. Jason picked up the encrypted phone and typed the code. It rang once, then silence, then a gruff voice. Still breathing, Statham. Jason didn't smirk. I need to pull a favor. Rourke didn't ask why. Drop point. Jason gave him an address. 20 minutes later, a duffel bag arrived at his door, no delivery person in sight. Inside, tactical equipment, paper files, a burner laptop with satellite ping capabilities, and a flash drive marked in red. Tether logs program Ember. Jason's pulse slowed. This wasn't just targeting. This was a government op, or at least it started that way. He loaded the flash. On screen, a program launched, old interface, all terminal code. Claire once called this kind cold architecture, used for black sites because it leaves almost no trace. The girl's photo flashed again. Then a file loaded beside it. Subject: Ember 71A, age 9, connection, indirect lineage status, proximity test pending. Jason's brow furrowed. Lineage. He scrolled down. More photos appeared, not of the girl but of her mother. Jason's blood ran cold. He hadn't seen that face in over 10 years. Her name was Lee. A field medic, kind, tough, beautiful in that quiet, unshakable way. They met in Prague, mid-mission, mid-chaos. She stitched up his ribs under gunfire and didn't flinch once. They worked 2 missions together, maybe 3. She left the field early, said the life wasn't hers to keep. They'd lost touch after that. Jason never knew she had a daughter. The file didn't name the father. But the algorithm tagged Jason with a 73% genetic probability. He sat still. The room spun. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at the screen like it might apologize. Then slowly a breath escaped his lungs. "Why now?" he whispered. "Why bring this to light? Why target him through this?" Was this a warning, a threat, or something else entirely? He stood, paced, then grabbed his phone, dialed Claire. She answered fast. "You look like hell," she said, picking up on the tension instantly. Jason didn't waste time. "I need a DNA scan on a 9-year-old girl." Quietly, Claire hesitated. "Jason, I need to know if she's mine." Silence. "Then, send what you have." He did. The files, the trace report, the embedded metadata from the surveillance wipe. Claire said nothing for a full minute, then quietly, "Okay, I'll handle it." Meanwhile, Jason started digging through the Ember logs. Each subject marked with a similar status, some labeled leverage, others marked test asset, and 3, including the girl, were flagged activation pending. The phrase chilled him. What were they activating? And why now? He cross-referenced the girl's name with school records. Nothing current. Only one file, an elementary withdrawal notice dated 2 months ago, signed by a man named Travis Geller, the same man who stormed into the store that day. Jason recognized him instantly, not just from memory, from a different kind of file, one buried in his old unit's blacklist. Travis Geller, ex-Intel, washed out in 2012 after a failed operation in Lagos. Last known affiliation, Deep Shell. Jason sat back. Everything was coming together. The girl, the store, the father. It was scripted. They'd built a scene knowing Jason would walk into it. Only question now was why. His phone buzzed. Claire again. "I ran the markers." Jason braced. "She's yours." The air in his apartment changed, heavy still. Claire added softly, "They didn't just bait you. They used her to control your next move." Jason's jaw clenched. Not anymore. 3 hours later, Jason stood outside a fenced-off trailer park in Riverside. The sun was sinking low, casting amber over rows of aging mobile homes and broken porch lights. He didn't wear tactical gear, didn't bring weapons, just presence. He walked up the gravel path to Lot 42, knocked once. No answer, then again. The door creaked open slowly. The girl stood there, same hoodie, same eyes. Recognition lit her face. "Hi," she whispered. Jason crouched down. "Is your dad home?" She shook her head. "Left an hour ago, said not to answer the door." Jason smiled gently. "You're not in trouble." She hesitated, then opened the door wider. Jason stepped inside. The trailer was modest. A couch with a rip in the side. TV playing an old cartoon. Table with a microwave dinner half-eaten. Jason looked around, then sat on the couch. "You know who I am?" The girl nodded. "You're the man from the store," he smiled. "But more than that." She hesitated. "Are you my dad?" Jason didn't flinch. "I might be." She looked down. Jason leaned forward. "I need to protect you now, but that means we have to leave." She didn't argue. She just asked, "Can I bring my drawing stuff?" He smiled, heart aching. "As much as you want." Back at the car, Jason secured her in the back seat, gave her water, snacks, made sure she was comfortable, then walked 20 feet away, pulled out his phone, called Claire. "She's with me." Claire sounded relieved. "Good, you need a safe house." "No, I've got one." "Jason, what are you going to do?" He stared into the setting sun. "I'm going to find Travis Geller." And then, Jason's voice dropped. "I'm going to remind him why ghosts shouldn't bait lions." The wind hit harder out here. Jason stood on the cliffside highway outside Paso Verde, watching the coastline shimmer under morning fog. Behind him, the car idled quietly, the girl asleep in the back, her head resting against a small stuffed bear she'd picked from a gas station shelf. Jason hadn't said no. He wouldn't start now. His eyes stayed fixed on the road that curved toward the hills. The signal Claire had traced, Travis Geller's burner, pinged just 15 miles north, routed through a warehouse marked private maintenance only. It was always a warehouse. Always somewhere quiet, unremarkable. But this one was different, because this time Jason wasn't going in for a mission. He was going in for his daughter, and whoever built this operation, whoever approved Project Ember. They were going to learn what it meant to lay hands on something Jason Statham cared about. He stepped back to the car, opened the passenger side. The girl stirred. "Where are we?" she asked. Jason handed her a juice box. "Almost done." She looked at him. "Are you scared?" Jason hesitated, then shook his head. "I'm ready." She nodded like she understood. then leaned back and closed her eyes again. Jason closed the door and walked toward the fire. The warehouse sat low, near a dry riverbed, just off a gravel turnoff no GPS bothered to list. The sun had barely broken through the marine layer. Mist still clung to the dirt like breath on glass. Jason moved silently along the outer fence, scanning for motion sensors. None. That told him two things. Whoever was inside wasn't worried about being found. And they didn't think he'd make it this far. He scaled the back wall with fluid ease, landing like a shadow on the roof. Found the hatch, slid inside. The warehouse was dark, save for one strip of skylight leaking in above stacked crates. Computers hummed low from a portable server bank in the center. Two men patrolled the far wall, casual, armed but distracted. Jason didn't waste time. He dropped the first one in silence, a snap and a fall. The second barely turned before he hit the concrete. Jason moved to the servers. Plugged in the drive Claire had modified. A backdoor extractor, designed to drain all data, clone it, and leave nothing behind. While it worked, Jason scanned the nearby table. Photos, printed documents, the girl, Claire, even Jason himself. Handwritten notes underneath. Phase 2 begins after Statham compromised. He exhaled through his nose. Phase 2, what had he just triggered? Then he heard it. A door opened behind him, footsteps, unrushed, familiar. Jason turned. Travis Geller, older, lean. Beard now gray at the chin, but the eyes were still sharp, still arrogant. "I figured you'd find me," Geller said. Jason didn't move. "You left the breadcrumbs on purpose." Geller shrugged. "The world has changed, Statham. You're a relic, a liability." Jason tilted his head. "You used a child." Geller's expression didn't shift. "She's more than that." Jason stepped forward. "No, she's not. She's just a kid, and now she's mine." Geller paused, something flickering in his expression. "You figured it out." Jason's voice dropped. 73%. Geller looked down. "You were never supposed to know." Jason stepped even closer. "You used her to test me." "What's phase 2? Geller smirked. "The same thing it's always been, control. You're not the only ghost in the system anymore." Hive fell. Ember is next gen, smarter, cleaner, and built around emotional leverage. Heroes don't operate in a vacuum, Statham. They love. That makes them programmable. Jason's hands clenched. Geller raised his hands mockingly. "You gonna hit me? Make noise. Ruin the clean record they still pretend you didn't have." Jason didn't speak. He walked past Geller to the back wall. There, locked in a glass cabinet, a stack of files with Ember Final labeled across the side. Jason grabbed the case, turned, and said, "You're lucky I'm not who I used to be." Then cracked the glass cabinet with one swing of his elbow, shards flying. Geller lunged forward. But Jason moved first, fast, precise, a knee to the gut, elbow to the throat. Geller dropped, coughing. Jason stood over him. "Stay down." Then he walked away. Outside, the wind had picked up. Jason carried the case back to the car. The girl was awake now, sitting upright, rubbing her eyes. He slid into the driver's seat. She looked at him. "You okay?" Jason smiled. "Better now," she nodded. "Did you get what you needed?" Jason looked at her for a long moment. "I think I got what I didn't know I needed." She blinked. "Like what?" He turned the key in the ignition. "Like a reason to stop running." That night, Claire met them at a safe house deep in Joshua Tree, solar-powered, untraceable. Jason handed her the Ember case. She opened it slowly, saw the documents, the asset plans, the targeting matrix, the funding trail. And at the bottom, a list of names tagged for emotionally leveraged surveillance. Jason's name was there, so were 20 others, all former ops, all retired, all fathers. Claire looked up. "You're not the only one they plan to use." Jason nodded. "And now we know." She paused. Then whispered, "What happens next?" Jason looked through the window. The girl was sitting under the stars, drawing something in a little notepad. Unaware of what had nearly swallowed her whole, Jason's voice was low, steady. "We make sure they can't use anyone else." Claire said nothing. But her eyes said it all. 2 weeks later, at a press event for an intelligence oversight bill, an anonymous document dump hit 6 news outlets simultaneously. The Ember files. Redacted but complete. Operations that never got public scrutiny, blacklisted programs, child leverage models. The world read it, and it changed the way they looked at power. But behind the headlines, one name was never mentioned: Jason Statham, because he didn't do it for press, he did it for peace. And for the first time in a long time, he almost had some. Back at the store where it all began, Russell was sweeping the same aisle where the tie once hung. The shelves had been restocked, The air smelled like lemon cleaner, and no one remembered the day Jason walked in, except him. He kept the $50 bill, framed in the back office. Not for the money, for the reminder. That one small act could ripple through something far bigger than any of them realized. And somewhere in a government basement, a monitor blinked. A new file opened, a new folder. Ember status, dormant, until the file updated itself. One line changed. Status, rebuilding. Jason wasn't watching, but maybe he should have been.